I know you're a techie working in GStream, PulseAudio, and other
That's,
products also.
that's right.
Introduce yourself. Give us a brief.
Sure thing. So I am a free and open source software enthusiast of many years, since I
How many?
was quite young. My first Linux install was in 1998.
Wow.
So yeah, and since then I've been kind of an enthusiast, and then slowly became a contributor through college and sort of early parts of my career, and eventually found myself being able to work in the field professionally as well. Um, and I kind of found a sort of niche of this world that I quite enjoy working in, which is kind of low-level systems plumbing, especially around multimedia, audio, video, that kind of thing. So that's and to the point where now I run a small company where we do consulting around some of these projects that we work on. So that's
That's
kind
a
of the
dream. That's a dream come true, isn't it? No, where you can do the kind of work that you're interested in and enjoy doing it, and also.
yeah. It's yeah. It is quite. I would say it's quite a privilege to be able to kind of have like an interest in the thing that you want to do and have it be able to kind of
So why
support
did
you as well.
sorry? Why did you choose audio, Arun?
I think it's a series of accidents in a sense. So I quite like tinkering with the sort of lower level elements of the system. And I used to help organize Foster in sort of back in the day. And one particular year, Leonard Perring, who's basically uh, wrote PulseAudio, was visiting, and I sort of got interested in that project, and I started kind of did some like small hacks during Foster in that was kind of the jumping in point into this. So I quite liked working at that low level where you're kind of playing around with the plumbing layers and kind of there's a lot of different aspects to it. One is, of course, you have to be aware of all the details of what is happening. There's an element of performance. You're trying to squeeze out as much as you can from the system. So all of those are exciting to me. So I kind of found myself drawn to that side.
So basically, you worked on GStreamer, Pulse Audio, and now PipeWire. I mean,
That's right.
for people like somewhat unpad people like myself, how would you introduce us to these products?
Right. So each of these performs a different role. So PulseAudio is sort of the layer that sits between applications that want to do anything audio related on a system and the actual resources, the hardware resources. So say you have on this call right now, we have the browser that wants to capture audio from some mic, and basically PulseAudio is sitting as a layer in between the browser and the system and saying, okay, here are all the microphones available on this computer. You can enumerate them. Once you select the one you want to capture audio from, you tell me what format you want that audio in, and I will bring it to you. And you can do this without having to worry about, is there something else that needs to also capture audio at the same time? Is there anything else that needs to play audio at the same time? So if you're playing my voice right now and a notification comes up, PulseAudio will take care of mixing those two streams so that you can hear both of them. So kind of managing your audio resources. And PipeWire is kind of the new kid on the block. It's meant to replace PulseAudio eventually, provide those same features, but also pull in a bunch of other features that we've had disparate kind of pieces for in the Linux ecosystem. So the first is audio production. So music production has typically not been PulseAudio's strength, and people usually use something called Jack for that. And PipeWire is trying to kind of make a single system where whether you're doing professional audio or consumer audio, you don't have to kind of juggle around with a whole lot of knobs to just make that work. And while we're at it, it's also making it easier to do video. So if we've all seen this problem where multiple applications can't use your webcam at the same time, right? So something like PipeWire will sit in between and allow you to not have these kinds of constraints, and then allow you to do things like sandboxing. So what we're used to with phones, for example, where we want to be able to grant permission to an application before it can capture audio and video. So having something mediate access to the hardware allows you to do those sorts of things.
Amazing. And GStreamer?
So yes, and GStreamer is sitting one level on top of all of these things. So say you're writing, say a video player or a music player, or maybe something that's sitting in a server somewhere that's recording our call, or taking our call and sending it out from the server where all the audio and video is coming together, and then sending it out to say YouTube or Facebook or what have you. Um, GStreamer is basically a library that allows you to write applications like this by expressing your media processing as a pipeline. Right? So the pipeline in this case might be capture the video and then maybe crop it and then maybe encode it as compress it and encode it and then send it out over the internet. Right? So it allows you to kind of write multimedia applications by expressing them as a pipeline.
Amazing. And since I'm assuming that you're from the south, but which part of the south, and what was growing up like in India in those years? Did you have access to the net, to technology?
Yes, so I grew up in Bombay and then for a longer time in Bangalore. So we were lucky in that we had access to computers. So as I was growing up, like by the time I was 9 or 10, we had a computer lab, and I was kind of sneaking off in there after school, and like they're basically the older
Where's
kids
this?
would.
Which school? Which school?
This is Arya Mandir in Bandra
I see.
in
I
Bombay.
see.
Yeah,
I see.
so we had a little computer lab, and I kind of nagged the older kids over there, and they just give me snippets of basic code to run. So I'd have like my first program was 10 print Arun and 20 go to 10, and like
I
that was so exciting. And so that's how I kind of got into this. And then as I grew up and I was learning more, this was very clearly something that was very exciting to me. I think our first internet connection was like a VSNL shell connection, and that was also super
Yeah.
exciting because
Which
it's like,
cost 5,000 rupees a year, and
yeah, well, I was a
traffic was
student, so I
50.
could get for
Yeah.
500
Oh,
rupees.
okay. Five student. Correct.
Yeah,
500.
so this because yeah, the yeah, at that time 5,000 rupees a year was
Too much.
unthinkable. I couldn't go and justify asking my parents for to spend that kind of money
True.
on the internet. But yeah, we had that. But that was also the first time I actually jumped onto BBSs, and there's Linux India was kind of forming at that time. So that was my exposure to that part
And
of
you
the
were how
world.
old in 98? Yeah, how old were you?
I was
Because you're from
15. Yeah,
PDS is okay. Okay. Atul Chitnis
yeah,
and the dead guys, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, I see.
yeah.
Interesting. And then I wanted to know what's the kind of the scene of the sound community in India today. Are people working on free and open source in sound? Is enough being
Yes.
done?
So it's an interesting thing. It's a good question. So there are a lot of people working on audio professionally, and you would I would look at it as free software audio, but it's usually in the context of companies. So all these embedded system on chip companies that are working on audio in the kernel and taking that and putting that in devices. There are a lot of people working in that space. The number of people who are working upstream is much smaller. It's vanishingly small. I can probably name maybe like a handful of people who are also working upstream. Some of them are colleagues of mine. Some of them are friends that who work in other companies but have some sort of upstream focus. But it is a small number.
And where did you tell us about your company too?
Yeah, sure. So I did my engineering in Bangalore. Worked for a couple of years, not in open source software, more kind of application space, which was also interesting. And then I did my masters from IIT Kanpur. And then and at that point, I kind of had a sense that I want to work on some low-level systems things. So I studied file systems during my masters and started doing some work on the Linux kernel.
Wow.
Got a job around that kind of bootloaders and kernel kind of work. And then eventually jumped into working on PulseAudio and GStreamer for a few years. Then around 2014, I decided that I wanted to do this on my own. So I started freelancing, And then eventually I decided what I want to do is make a small team of people who are as interested and passionate about this as I am. So I started looking at actually running this as a company rather than just as myself. Because you can also potentially do more as if it's more than one person. So now that company is called Asymptotic. There's basically three or four of us at the moment. So it's a small, very small company, and we're mostly working in sort of GStreamer, PulseAudio, PipeWire. Doing some work upstream, doing some work with clients to help them deploy these projects in their products.
Yeah, yeah. And the shift between India to Canada, how was that?
It's been interesting. So I moved here just before the pandemic, so it's been kind of I don't know how much I've managed to experience Canada. But it is of course quite different, just lifestyle wise and everything.
Wow, wow, amazing. Anything that I forgot to ask? Or I think your sound, Arun, your sound.
Oh, is it gone again?
No, it's fine.
Uh, okay,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm saying anything.
Anything I forgot to ask or that should be mentioned?
I
Because it's
I
such an
can't.
interesting story. No, you all are the first generation of techies who have grown out of free software in India. And
Yeah, yeah.
we had this often complaint that the oft repeated complaint that India is not giving back to free software. And my theory was and is that we are not studying it enough. But people are doing things at the ground level. What's your take on that?
I think that is valid. So it's interesting that I feel like that is my complaint as well. That I would like to see a lot more work upstream, and this is probably a little bit. It's true in some sense that there are a lot of folks from in colleges that are working on open source projects through the Google Summer of Code, for example, and they have a way to kind of jump in a structured way that I think is a pretty great opportunity. And there are people who, after that, do continue to work on these projects or find jobs so that they can even work on this professionally. So the GNOME project, I know, ends up having a few people at least who kind of continue contributing. So I think slowly we're seeing that happen. At least in the Linuxy free software part of the world, and of course now that this has become a much wider space, right? Like now the Linux free software part is quite small compared to, say, the ecosystem of libraries and languages like web related front end stuff, back end stuff. There's so much. So I think there is activity. I think it's definitely in the last decade, I can say you can see that things have changed. Even like that, you see a lot of folks who look like us, like contributing and like being active and things like that. So I think the trajectory, it probably takes time, but it's visible.
And last question, if I were to ask you the three things that shaped your entry and opportunity to enter the free software open source world, what would they be?
I think the first, which I don't think I give enough uh, like actively acknowledged maybe as much as community, in that there were a lot of opportunities, especially in Bangalore with the Bangalore Linux users group, where you could meet people who were as excited about the things that you're excited about. You could I started like speaking at a blog. That was my first public talk, for example.
Wow.
And that led to Linux Bangalore, fostered, and all of that participation, I think, was one important thing. The second thing I think is, well, this we take it for granted now, but access to the internet actually changed our like the entire dynamic of how we were learning new things, how we were exposed to new things. Right before that, I first learned things by reading code snippets in a magazine, which is a very different experience from how we do things now. So I think like being able to learn by yourself is probably the second thing, and the third thing I think is just kind of going from it being something you think about to just doing it, like kind of taking that step past whatever mental barriers there are to being able to contribute, whether it's a sense of not being able to or not knowing what you want to do, just making the leap. I think like these three things are probably the most important if you wanted to start contributing.
Of course, thanks a ton, not for your time today, but for creating and contributing community and to the open source ideal so much. And it's
Thank you so
really
much.
impressive to see youngsters from the 90s grow up into techies and full-fledged, full-bloom techies today. Wishing you all the best, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for your time also, Arun.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks
Thanks
for
a lot.
having me. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.